to make a slide. So then I got harried to make certain I was on time, which is actually a good point. Otherwise, we would go over. Tell me, no, I was going to say, how many of you read the next item? Be a bit cheeky on me. Local government finance agency, but again, it's a bit like our treasury management policy. These are the people that provide us with the money. So they're a pretty important crowd. Donna, are you going to give us any heads up on this, or have you got to take it?
Well, I'm just going to take a report to read actually. It's the quarterly report, both at the end of March. Everything from when I read through the report, everything seems to be going pretty well for them. If they are not meeting a couple of their targets, but they've got pretty good reasons in the report as to reasons why they haven't. And I think they're in a better position than what was anticipated with COVID, a few months ago. And so I think, things are going very well in that space. But I'll have any questions on the report.
Laura, I thought it might be useful just to remind us what is the nature, what sort of shareholder are we in building agents? The reason I ask that is that if you were to turn to page 114, where there is a dazzling graph of numbers, there is actually a really important little bit at the bottom it deals with. It's those items around the top spread.
Yeah.
So this is actually about the cost of the finance. We talked about cost of funds. We looked at it, there was the interest rate swap, there was the margins, there was the commitment fee, etc., which make up our total cost of funds. Well, this actually says that not all local authorities are equal in local government financing agency. It depends on whether you're a shareholder, whether you're a guarantor, or whether you're just loaning money from them. So perhaps you could just give us a short.
So we are a borrower and a guarantor.
So we are a borrower, we are a guarantor, and we are unrated. And we are unrated. So a rating is where a Moody's or a Fitch's or a Standard & Poor's would give us a credit rating. Okay, so essentially, the funding agency says the more you are involved in us, it's perhaps a wee bit vernacular, the better the rate. Now, I don't think anybody can become a shareholder because it was the original 9 numbers, so they're just.
We are a shareholder.
Sorry, the original ones, I think it doesn't matter necessarily that we're in there. But then the question becomes, are we a guarantor? Yes, so we are following into the club because there is essentially the guarantee across the agencies, across the local authorities around performance. And then there's actually the fact that we chose to have a credit rating, which probably costs $50,000 a year. We could reduce our rate. So if you look at it, you can see at the bottom there, the second bottom line, for instance, the basis points for an unrated council, which is us, is 51.25, whereas if you were rated and you go to A+, A- and AA, it would lower, and basis points are of 8%, not 51%, but of 8%. There would be the chance to lower the cost of it. You probably need a reasonable whack of it to make that.
So we do, and we've looked at it, and I look at it often. And we did get to a point where we're right on the cuff. If we borrow any more, then yes, it would be beneficial for us to be rated. However, with Three Waters going and not knowing what the future holds, I don't want to commit the council to that $50,000 a year when it could be that we're not going to see the benefits of being rated in the future. So we just want to hold the position that we're in at the moment and see how that goes.
I just wanted to ask about the 3 councils, the 3 large councils that got bonds. So, how do the bonds work in this situation?
Well, the situation with Auckland is that it is a is that it has a billion dollars debt, but it has chosen to spread the counterparty risk. So the counterparty is who you get debt from, and rather than get it all from LGFA, it also gets it directly from the bond markets. And I don't actually understand Christchurch's situation, but I suspect it's probably the same. And in the Eden City situation, they are not a member, I think, of LGFA, and they stand totally in the market on their own right through the Treasury Fund. As a matter of principle, they hadn't certainly until recently, yet they hadn't joined LGFA. So they are large borrowers in their own right. So you were looking at investment and loan government. There are essentially two options, like the LGFA or indeed these three councils that undertake their own borrowing and their own rights in the market. They do that because, Auckland spreads counterparty risk, coast of the Eden City, and where they believe they get a sort of rate by being up there by themselves. Bear in mind, again, relative to change, the program. So, you don't build a covered stadium for nothing. So, there are those sorts of aspects of it that make it influence that. Okay, any other thoughts on here? I just want to take that time just to recognise there is a sweet bit of value inside this. Is obviously, they're very good communicators. We've got a 3-quarterly report. I think perhaps most importantly, the thing I know from here is I am convinced, and I know that they will want to have those red crosses under green ticks. But in essence, their financial covenants are secure. I think it's not yesterday.
Just query, if the Three Waters, there's a lot of this around my question, if the Three Waters go through, we're going to see on PwC's graph dropping their debt to 44 million.
Yep.
How are you controlling the maturity of the money you're borrowing against what may happen in the future, and perhaps any penalties and do you get penalties the way we do in the normal market? Because it seems to me you've got a whole lot of balls up here with really rice covers.
Yes, well, they're cannonballs.
Yeah.
They're not even tennis balls.
No, they're not tennis balls, they're big ones.
That's true, and you're right. And we have been told to carry on as normal, so we have to try and do the best that we can for the future, for what we know, and that is a hot topic around the sector of what is going to happen. How, what is going to happen to all the swaps that the sector's got, how they can be allocated to the water assets or what assets. There's a whole lot of stuff still up in the air and undecided on how that's going to play out.
It's impossible to manage, isn't it?
It is. It's really, really difficult to manage it.
I think like the maturity dates.
For me, that's why we like all the swaps. We want to stay
They
with
fall in
the
what's going to happen, so we're lucky.
so that we're not committing. Like, I don't want to be committing the council to a whole lot of swaps that, we may end up, out of the money or in a position where we haven't even got that going forward.
Yep.
So, it's difficult.
This goes back to even the point, Murray, that Sandra made before. This is the transition arrangements.
Yes.
So critical to even getting us to face one. How do we want to react in terms of public assets we've built? It's in part, in a large part, what's going to be what are the transition arrangements, which is actually how, can you simply notate these debts and instruments to whatever the new entity is? If you can't, we settle with costs, becomes really quite difficult. It's an imponderable, we can't solve it today, but this comes back to my question when we argue here around, have we got the headspace, basically, to be able to start thinking and strategizing about being able to address these things.
Well, I listened to Parliament the other day and I probably didn't hear anything because one speaker alluded to this going out for a year. I've never heard anything else. I actually heard it in a speech, and I actually think the time frame is short, but
Yeah.
I haven't heard anything other than that one speech in Parliament, and I'm thinking drops the plane that one spoken.
This is what's in the front of the house somewhere.
Whenever legislation they turn out, if they abrogate the rights on property that are owned by this district, they've got a problem. In my view,
So it does.
they can't do that. They can in the law, but it's an abrogation of common law right, which they are doing any assessment of. They never did that for the RMA, and they still abrogated the rights on property at that stage, which is consuming a common law right within a legislative paradigm that people don't have any answer to, takes away that common law right. So, you know,
So we would not be managing. Would not be managing it.
oh, they are managing it. That's the thing.
So thank you. If I can go back to the PMA, what any other questions you would like to raise over this?
What's our exposure if so the three companies you named, which have got substantial bonds,
Yeah.
what happens to us in the event of forfeiture?
Sorry, forfeiture by who?
By the bondholders?
Those three councils, their bonds are, they have bonds like for themselves, they're not
That's
through
right.
the LGFA, so that doesn't.
Aren't we guarantors for this fund?
Not legal.
Not that they-
As long as it's guarantors for this fund and they borrow from the fund.
They also borrow outside of this fund as well, so we're only responsible for, as part of guarantors of the LGFA.
Aren't we a guarantor shareholder? That means we take the highs and the lows of the borrowers, the people who borrow from us.
Yes.
Therefore, if there's any default from a borrower, who wears that? It's us
Yes.
as a guarantor.
I think it's a point interesting point, and the nuance there. If the Needham City was the fault, it would not be a problem for us because they're totally outside the LGFA system. Okay, they don't belong to the LGFA, so if there's a problem with the Needham City, it doesn't affect us. As far as
If they borrow from us, they can't pay it back.
no, they haven't borrowed from us. They have gone to the open market
Yeah.
and
the open market
against the retail market overseas.
Yeah.
They would be responsible for those people for their problems, and there would be no comeback.
They've gone directly.
In the first instance, it's a problem.
Parliament's through LGFA,
Yeah.
other borrowers through LGFA. They've gone directly to the market themselves.
If Auckland was to default in some way on its externally borrowed money, not through LGFA, but that had a broader implication on its total capacity situation, but that's my take rate at the moment to be able to give you an answer.
They've got bonds with LGFA.
No,
No.
No.
Yes, they have,
they
sorry.
have some.
I think we need to be careful. Auckland Council sourced their debt finance from two sources. One of them definitely is LGFA.
Yes.
The other, but that's not the complete debt book.
I understand that.
That comes from external. What I'm trying to reflect is if they default on their external debt, there is, that's again a relationship between Auckland Council and whoever in the private
What if they
market.
default on their bonds?
If they default on the LGFA, yes, it does affect all of us.
Thank you.
I mean, but there's nothing new in that. We've always known that you never need to guarantee on.
That's probably why they're better.
But I'm highlighting it because of that three-quarters reform. Anyway, it's all right, it's just, I just wanted to make sure that people were aware.
Okay, so there is questions on it's good to take time over these boards. Anybody has a question? This being the case, I'll put the motion that we receive the LGFA support. All those in favour, say aye. Sorry about that. Thank you, Sally. All those in favour, please say aye. Those against? Carry. Terry, I'm just conscious that I didn't look your way to see whether you had your hand up. Please make certain that you make a little noise if I've missed out a question you had.
Yeah, no trouble, Bruce. No, I'm good, thank you.
So we've got the two members, which I think we got in the cost area.
The supplementary who's
Supplementary, the agenda.
Oh, sorry, sorry, yes, quite right. Apologies about that. I was ahead of myself, what was next? Al, okay, sorry, Cal, can I, Don, it's okay with you, could I invite Cal to talk to this report, please?
yeah, so we'll take the report as read and if you have any questions, we'll away.
Yeah.
The Chair, I think there's three areas that I just wanted to point out from the report that people sort of targeted. So the first is we expressed a opinion that had an emphasis of matter paragraph on, and the emphasis of matter paragraph has been much discussed this morning. It's the uncertainty with the three waters. So the requirement is council disclosed in the study document. We budgeting for business as usual, but there's a good chance that business won't be as usual. But the certainty hasn't come in time for the seed process. The second part that I'd like to highlight is on page 10 of my no, this will put yours. Page 13 of the pack, we will look at the quality of the assets. So this year there's a big focus from the Auditor General to look at underlying data and data that support your asset management plan, the infrastructure plans, because that drives a big bit of the LTP money. And what we found is that the asset management plans for infrastructure assets and for roading and sorry, let me just find the place. So the three water asset management plan was a bit lacking. We found that it was outdated and not the latest information from council was included in the plan. So the plans for roading was okay, and in the TA comes around each year and does an audit on what you know about the data, and then based on that, that is constantly funded. For the three water assets, most of the above ground assets were okay, because these things are easy to test, see, measure, identify, those kind of things. But the data for the underground assets were not as good throughout the plan, and a lot of these were related to the Thames area where they were installed prior to good record keeping. So we had to say, so your asset management plan is basically the document that we use to take through to your infrastructure strategy, because that identifies the assets, say what you're going to do, what's the period you can improve or replace them. We had to go deep into council's information to see, how did council decide to put the projects in and to put the works into the infrastructure strategy without having an updated asset management plan. So we spent a lot of time with Bruce and the team, and we came to the conclusion that if you look at page 14 of the pack, we did some additional work and looked at the mitigating factors that council had in place. And so the biggest area of concern was included in the plan. There's a lot of renewal plan for the Thames area, and then council was also busy with the CCTV process to assess other underground assets and to build up condition and data, performance and condition data of these assets. So at the end, we were happy with that. We made a recommendation that council updated the asset management plans. The next area that I wanted to highlight is I was very clear that I made my notes based on my report. So the next one would be my report, page 14, and your part 17. When we looked at the infrastructure strategy, we go through a lot of tests to see whether this document is really a document that looks forward 30 years. So the main bit for the LTP is the first 10 years. So we found overall first 10 years was very good in identifying the projects that are going to feature into the LTP process that was included in the consultation document. However, for the further on years, it wasn't very specific on what are the key things that's going to come council's way. We found, I think, 2 projects in that space for going forward. So when we look forward for the rest of the period for the infrastructure strategy, we recommended that it be more specific in that regard. Also, paragraph 8.1 there is it's important, I think, that the infrastructure strategy also explains not just list the projects that are there, but why they are important and why these projects have risen to the top. So that when a person reads the infrastructure strategy, you can identify that. Also, then we also said there's certain recommendations for going forward. The last 2 bullet points there's not enough information to provide to understand the capacity issues in water and wastewater long term. And what is likely to impact the future years of water demand strategy due to deferring significant growth. So if you don't prepare for growth now and you're deferring it to later, what's going to be the issues and the points that you have to do going forward, but it comes back to the key projects going forward. And then what are likely the big climate decisions, but I know the council is doing a lot of work in the climate change. That one. Sorry.
I knew what you were talking about.
So those are the areas that give us that we really don't overall to express that unqualified opinion on the CT document.
Thank you for that, Carol. That's very helpful in thinking that we could have a report. Yes, Sandra.
Just on that last one, what are the likely big climate decisions in the next 30 years related to infrastructure assets? What are they?
Well, I suppose your coastal management plan would point that out. But I think the idea is where, I suppose, if in the past you put a wastewater pipe of X diameter because you provided for a 1 in 50 year flood, with the new climate information, are you going to do that to double the size or triple the size, or are you going to use different types of materials and things? Or when you look at, I suppose, providing infrastructure and replacing existing infrastructure, how will this be driven from what you know from climate change?
Will the Thames water, wastewater stay where it is for the next 30 years, or will we have to? That kind of question as far as I'm concerned.
So I think it's the people. So what are the likely big climate decisions? And so next 10 years. So it's identifying where you might change the asset. Are you in some way?
No.
Yeah. I just wondered if you had an idea in your head about that. So basically it's around location.
I suppose the location and material, and you talk about earlier the stormwater drain, the diameter. Previously we said we're gonna prepare for a once in a 50-year flood. Now a once in a 50-year flood is a lot more likely to occur every 25 years. So we have to increase the size and diameter, number of pump stations to get water away from people.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, one comment, I think, going 0 to 10 is very useful, and I think it's been done pretty well here. Going out beyond that, there is so much that we don't know. I think you squander a lot of time trying to think what's going to happen in years 11 to 30, when we don't really know what's going to happen in year 5. So for me, like I say, I'm comfortable with the quality of the work with our infrastructure going out for the long-term plan, being mindful that during the course of that long-term plan, there's going to be other things change. And so we've spoken before, it's the RMA reform, local government reform, clean water reform. And I think we have to wait to know a lot more about that before we kill it up to deal with it. So for me, making plans, especially financial analysis and stuff, going that far out, I think is just one of time. So I personally am comfortable with the position we're in.
Oh, sorry, Rob.
I was just going to raise a question. It might not be linked to this report, but I firmly believe it is, because it sort of affects the relationship with how we want to New Zealand in terms of the results that we get. And that is leading on from what Tony's just said. Years 11 to 30 can be so dramatically affected by government changes in policy and the infrastructure build of central government. That, you know, contemplating issues such as this in years 11 to 30 for a local TLA is sort of a bit silly. And the best example I can give at the moment is we are coming to the end of our long-term plan cycle. We're just about to get to the point where we're deliberating to be able to sign things off, and that is like a few weeks away. And yet Audit New Zealand, sorry, not Audit New Zealand, Waka Kotahi have now told us that they're going to change the funding assistance rate. But they're not actually going to tell us until the week of our sign-offs. So we don't have the opportunity to actually run that information through our financial models with such clarity to provide this council with the robust information that it needs to be able to build a good rating model because of a government agency. And that's the best example of where I can suggest a government agency with a complete lack of attention to council process, which flabbergasts me with Waka Kotahi, because they've been working with councils for quite some time now. They do know the processes that we work with. It's a complete skew at the 11th hour. And what that means for Audit New Zealand, and I feel for Audit New Zealand, because nationally now Audit New Zealand are facing the potential to tag everybody's audits of their long-term plan process with the basis that we can't build robust financial models because our financial assistance rate has changed and we haven't modeled it, but we haven't had the opportunity to model it. So that is a real risk for us in the next couple of months. Absolutely. Honestly, that is such craziness. And my appeal would be for the foot soldiers of Audit New Zealand to pass that message back to the Auditor General to say, local government is getting tagged because of a central government department not having cognizance to a process that has been going on in local government for 18 months or more, and everyone knows it's coming to a close. That is so frustrating.
Rude point, Rob. One can only, serious, one can only think it's going one way. It's not a sort of, it's not actually the one ecosystem throws it, it's the actual quantum of progress.
This is where I say we're juggling cannonballs, but at the last minute, Waka Kotahi introduced a banana.
I get that, Rob. I think it's actually the quantum of the program, not the far rate that will change, but I agree with me. The point is well made, that actually, if you have substantial eroding, you can be in for a significant nasty shock in the next.
That's us. That's us.
And it does raise questions about the validity of the LPP that we put on. So it's difficult. Yeah, sorry.
I just want to say, I think we are in a slightly better position, but correct me if I'm wrong, Carl, than some other councils, in fact, that we're not signing until the 30th of June. Councils that are signing tomorrow or within the next short while are definitely not going to have a chance to try and work and get this right for signing. So we have got a little bit of time, even though it's not great. It will depend how quickly or how we can react to it. It will depend on how Waka Kotahi come out and say that they are going to cut the program, whether it's, as Rob said, if it's the far rate, say if it's going from 51 to 49%, and it was across the board, that all our roading projects, well then it's not such a difficult task to do to be able to get that right for the LTP to flow it through the model. However, if they come back and they pick and choose and they say, well, we're going to give you this much for bridges, but we're only going to give you this much for, this for your maintenance roads and things like that. Well, that's a whole bigger picture. That's going to really impact on the staff to be able to go through and flow that through the model, because they will have to go through individually every project manually and do that to get it flowed through the model. So that's a huge piece of work
We don't go through the long, wait till the next annual plan, like, have them do the work and then bring it in at annual plan time.
Again, the reason I raised it under this item is I feel for Carl. Because Carl is going to be in a position where there's the pressure to have an emphasis of matter as an absolute minimum, but probably a tag to say you cannot rely on the financial models in this LTP. That makes everybody look bad because we've all been working together for 18 months to produce a real quality document. And it stops it, it pulls the rug out of Audit New Zealand and out of local government as a whole across the country. It makes us look stupid, but it's got absolutely nothing to do with local government. That's the point I made.
Yeah.
So yes, we can tidy it up for the annual plan, absolutely, because we can do those things. But it doesn't change the fact that we want to build credibility in our whole of government approach. We don't want to detract from that credibility.
But it means that we're non-compliant.
Yes.
But there's a reason for it, so you don't worry about it. For me, never worry about something that can't change.
Yeah, no, I mean,
I think the problem is actually, we're such a process by it, which actually, I don't know, it will be easily fixed in every plan. It possibly means reconciliation.
Well,
It's,
so in the bill, what's the target?
I mean, my point is that it's so fundamental. Why say it, you are particularly eroding district, and I still do. This actually raises questions about, and this is the problem for you, Carl, as you know, I'm going to suck eggs here, the fundamental, not accuracy, reasonableness, because that's what it's for, fundamental reasonableness of the plan. That's the problem. I think just to add to that, I think that when you get it's up to council to do the assessment whether the video significantly engaged in policy, have the legal people with you in the decision, and when you get to the answer, yes, it will be, yes, it won't be, let's talk and take it from there, because that's the decision that will be taken on the day.
So, but can we expand on that? So if we are non-compliant, and you're saying that we're going to have to go out to public consultation as a consequence of being non-compliant in our...
No, I think what I'm trying to reflect here is Rob's point is well made, but the question is the change, and this is where we don't know. I mean, this goes right back to the essence of Rob's point. If it was a substantial change, if it was a big change, there was a whole gap in our roading budget as a result of reduced funding or change in bar rate. It actually says the plan itself is fundamentally flawed.
So we send Audit Officer bill.
No, it's not the the question becomes, because actually it's a rating, it's probably a rating of that. Yeah. And actually, if it applies essentially from 1 July, why do we go out with a bad plan? Because you're going to have time to think about changing parameters. So it really is a conundrum. Bruce, I'm going to look at you, you have really latest updates or?
Through the chair, the only information we've got is at this stage was heading more towards pulling packages that work out as opposed to changing the bar rate. Yes, I think I understand that what Don was saying, that in some ways the far back's an easy one for us to remodel because it's changed from percentage that flows through, but from what we're hearing, it's not that, it's more around taking out packages that work as a we're not going to fund that package. So then the council has to make a decision on, do we now make up that shortfall to keep our scope of works the same, or do we now say, we're gonna pull back and not do that work, which effectively means we're sweating our own assets, which we don't really want to do, but we also got to be mindful of the rates. So there's some decisions we made, but probably, and we need to be ready to have those conversations, as I mentioned. But again, picking up on Councillor Fox's point is, from my perspective, we can't worry about things that we actually don't have any clarity over yet. We just need to be ready across time when we have that clarity.
so if we do have to do the work on all of these specific projects, therefore, and it's considered that it's appropriate that we actually have to go out for public consultation on a change rating impact, can that public consultation be solely on that roading component?
Well,
Because I really wouldn't want to go out and relitigate everything else.
And you would probably find that we could, I'm sure we would find legal support that it would be a concentrated form of consultation, not the whole month, etc. I think the point that we've got here, because we are dealing with some couple of been crazy in a month prior to adoption, that we're dealing with some ponderables here. We've got two things. We've got a systems issue, which Rob, you have made strongly, and Carl, it's only getting reinforced by he's been reinforced by every other client he works on. This is just nuts. How do you defend a situation where that department or the agency that's so fundamental to planning can't give us a view 30 days prior to the adoption of a key piece of our planning? So that's the point. But the other thing is the risk that we have internally that when we get this number, we have to figure out how we deal with it and its impact. And so the question becomes of resource and the ability to react when it comes in the door. And can I say the question that might create an entire mind with LTP. That's the problem. Bear in mind you have to have an LTP to be able to see rates.
Who are we gonna put on the balls on?
Okay, so I don't. We're not going to. We haven't got an easy way to determine that right at the moment. I don't think, but it's going to be critical that we, when Bruce gets the email from Dr. Kotahi, it's not just the functional operational issue, it's actually a strategic and planning issue. It's going to be significant.
From my perspective, Bruce, the reason I raised it is because I see New Zealand as a real ally in this regard. So where I was hoping we may be able to get something is a phone call from the Auditor General to whoever advises Waka Kotahi to say, do you realise the huge skew that this is putting through local government, and can you actually do anything about it? Because, we've only got a week really to give most of local government the ability to not go up on a huge skew.
Well, you need to advise two people, the Minister for Waka Kotahi and the Minister for Local Government, because those are the two that are going to be affected.
It makes some assumption this is also going back to local government.
No surprises.
Because probably take a local government become the solve the main. Yeah. Okay.
Why would that very strongly done?
It always gets diluted, but there's a lot of general, we would hope that they would listen to that office.
Right.
That's an urgency.
Okay, so Carl, thank you for your report. Exactly, as you can see, it's been good to capture relatively in close proximity where we got to with the most importantly, you focused us on the things going forward that are relevant to the culture of the LTP and what the viewpoints is taken into recognising. Actually, we get to acknowledge we've got significant risk around our finalising our LTP, which maybe sitting and wait in terms of literally what we can do on the ground. Can I move to Donna's recommendation to receive the report? Could I ask for a move to receive? Thank you, John. Thank you, Murray. I'll put that we receive Cal, all those opposed, say aye. Aye. Those against? There. Thank you. Right, now we're back to main agenda, and it is a chance for comments from members. I'll start with you, Sandra, and go around the room.
No, I think my grades will be when they're on my drawings for the duration of the meeting.
Right.
I've got nothing else to.
Thank you. So we were at Mark?
No, thank you.
Fine.
No.
Fine. No, good. I was going to raise the other thing. Terry. Sorry, Terry. Oh, you'll trick me, mate. I must say you were better or something. Sorry about that. Is anything?
All right, so members' reports.
Yeah, I can't hear.
So I just want a couple of little things to say. I've been listening to the meeting. I don't know. I just think this may be our last LTP under Local Government New Zealand is what's going on. I think the future is more about the central government dictating down and implementing policy and procedure. There's little information flowing down. It's more about the decisions, which I get concerned about that. And if you look at the past history, government has sold public assets before, so it's always on the case. And if you look at the Three Waters, the WRC look like they'll be the enforcer of the Three Waters program, so they've picked up a lot of that business, which we've lost. Yeah, and then just to give you an idea on the supply chain, I went to Bunnings yesterday to buy a bit of 150 by 50 dressed timber. They had none, and they said they didn't know when they were getting more into it. So I think the supply chain is getting to be more and more of an issue, and most probably will put some stress on business and costs going up. So I just see that as something that we should think about going forward. I don't know how quite to address it, but it's an issue for sure. And finally, I've been working on some information review for a pretty dramatic problem over in one of the wards, but we're working it through. It was good to see council looking to support health and wellbeing of elected members. Thank you.
Thanks, Terry. I think Parkhill indicated that he's certainly looking to whether it's within the system yet organise a risk workshop. I think that, Terry, your point about capital delivery, supply chain issues, there's a whole bunch of issues. It's absolutely exercising the mind of the sector now. And I would suspect that's something we may want to think through the role of this committee in having a view around risk on that. We'll get to that at a later stage. I had no comments to make. I was going to raise the LTP, but we have done that successfully in the prior items, so that's good. I think that what we do is we just pass a short resolution that we just received the comments. Thank you, Sally. I have a seconder, please. Yeah. Thank you, Robin. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against, carried. So look, that's the end of the open agenda. I would like to move into public considered. We have a